Hey guys, thanks for tuning in today. And I'm very excited because I have an absolute expert in all things branding. So welcome Stella Gianotto. And what she does is she helps retailers increase their market share and futurize their customer experience 360 degrees, helping them understand why is it that consumers buy. So she's got over 25 years experience in the design world, and believe it or not, design branding, it has a lot of overlaps and integration with change management. But Stella, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hello, thank you. Thanks for having me, Friska. I'm excited to be here.
Great. And so thanks so much for joining the show. And I wanted to reach out because as a change management consultant, I often have to build a brand for the change, whatever that change may be. It could be a digital transformation. It could be trying to sell a merger and an acquisition. It could be a new process or a policy to abide by. And so what lessons can you share with us about building a brand that sells itself?
So what's really interesting is brands that kind of sell themselves are ones that will adapt and change with the time so that they actually hear what is actually going on. And when I say hear, not only are they hearing, but they're adapting their marketing and so forth. But brands that also sell themselves, not only do they pivot quickly, but they actually adopt change in any way, shape or form much more rapidly and from an internal culture perspective, more so than any other brands. And what makes them more successful is the fact that they're able to communicate their brand values from the inside out. So everything that they do is in alignment with this overall vision for the business. And that can differ for many different brands depending on the stage and life cycle of business that it's at. But not only is it communicated internally, but it's communicated externally. So anything that they do in terms of their marketing and their social media, the end user or the ideal client or target audience knows at all times what that brand or that business is trying to achieve. So they're the ones that actually successfully sell themselves.
So it just flows. Everything's in alignment, yeah, inside and outside. And they stay true to their brand values, as you said.
Yes, they do. And it's all underpinned by that one vision.
Okay. Can you give us an example then? So who are the brands that you feel have adapted and changed with the times?
Well, there's quite a few actually. I mean, some have gotten it horribly wrong, but let's just start with some of the I suppose brands that have made, cheap become more chic. So Target and Kmart and Woolworths were probably at the forefront. They came out hard and strong, and Kmart and Woolworths in particular came out very early and said, look, there's going to be some changes. We know that some of the low trafficked stores in some of the environments, we're going to have to shut them down. But what we're going to do is we're going to repurpose them. We're going to turn them into click and collect centres and distribution centres. Oh, and by the way, instead of us laying off our staff and getting rid of our workforce, we actually need more workforce now because we believe the onslaught to digital and online shopping and purchasing is going to skyrocket something like 300%. Wow. So in both of those, they actually put on thousands of employees. They also were very quick in their marketing and communications to show that it was safe to shop with them, that they had attention to hygiene, and that they had contactless trade. And they didn't have to say it because you saw it in their visual and their non-visual communications. So for me, they were great. If we look at, I suppose, more fashion-oriented brands, ones that really stood out for me were Adore Beauty and Camilla and Marc. Both of them pivoted very quickly. So Adore Beauty was great because they were like, we have everything that you need beauty in a box, whether it's your in-home facials, whether it's your hair care or skincare. And guess what? We're going to package it all up, whatever it is that you need. And we're going to reward you from purchasing from us because we're going to give you something really nice in the box for you to eat, like some chocolate and so forth. So they were great because they made the consumer experience fantastic. One of my personal favorites is Camilla and Marc, though. They actually launched at the beginning of May a new online e-tail in terms of the digital space. They had online consultants. You could book a stylist. So you could literally have a fashion styling session in your own home. And in addition to that, the way that they kept engaging with their end user is using social platforms by having inactive wear challenges so that it made sure that people stayed fit and healthy and active throughout, even though they didn't necessarily have a line of clothing that way. Oh, wow. So all of those adapted quickly. They came out early and said, in essence, we don't know what's going to happen. So here's what we're doing to change, and here's what we're doing to help you out. And they kept engaging all the way throughout. So they were standouts for me.
Oh, those are brilliant examples. So why have they been able to pivot so quickly and so successfully and others haven't? So what are the essential sort of success factors that you've noticed that they have?
Well, I think the success factors in all of those cases is that they communicated from day one. And it was okay to come out in your communication and say, look, we're not quite sure where we're going to end up. We're not quite sure what's going on. We hear you and we're here for you. And this is what we're going to do for you. And this is how we're going to make your lives easier. So the communication strategy in all of their cases was absolute paramount. The other thing too is they matched the tone to the consumer sentiment. So you have to understand, when we went into lockdown and we weren't allowed to do our normal behaviours, in essence, we felt like we were punished because all of our social liberties were taken away. So our psyche changed permanently. So they matched the tone to what we were thinking and feeling. So many of them did away with influencers and celebrities and so forth, and used everyday people, or what appeared to be everyday people, to say, you know what, we're in this together. Some of them even used staff in their own advertising marketing. So they matched the tone visually and verbally, and that was very, very important. And one of the other things that they were quite successful in doing too is that they made sure that they connected all the time with their end user, and they used various mediums. So those that adopted what we call a cross-platform strategy were very, very successful.
Yeah. Oh my God, so many overlaps with change management, right? You can't just rely on an email. You also have to do a town hall, and there's nothing like user-generated content. I remember installing a $42 million tech implementation at the largest policing jurisdiction in the world. And the most effective training material was some guy recording himself saying, hey, guess what? You can do this now. It's a beauty. It was 60 seconds, posted it on Yammer, went viral, right? More than the hours and hours of laborious, effort-intensive training programs that were delivered. So yeah, I can see how
people want that reality. They want the rawness and they want the realness. So this hyper reality that we once had in advertising, or that we used to see brands portray, particularly with influencers and some experts and some celebrities, that is completely foreign to us now. We don't understand it after coming out of lockdown.
Yeah. So those were examples of B2C brands. What about B2B? Who's done that pretty well, do you think?
B2B brands is interesting because, and this will be a little controversial, but B2B brands really didn't have to adapt all that much. And the reason being is because they didn't have the presence of bricks and mortar, or a traditional bricks and mortar setup to actually rely on. So they didn't rely like a traditional retail or business to consumer brands that if you build it, they will come, because they had to go out and identify their target audience very well. They had to know how to communicate with them, and they had to do it far more vigorously and more intensely than what business to consumer brands did, because of the fact that they didn't necessarily have a product to portray. So in my opinion, a lot of the business to business brands actually adapted much quicker and quite well. And for a lot of them, when they went into lockdown, it was almost business as usual. They'd already adopted tech. They had already adopted many different models of working, whether it was casualized, whether it was, you know, a hybrid model of some working in a hub and others working remotely. So for them, it wasn't really too much of a change. I guess some of the B2B brands that have done it really well, gosh, there's too many to mention, to be honest. Yeah, like I said, there wasn't too much adaptation with business to business.
Yeah, no,
because it was business as usual.
And what about, okay, who didn't adapt? Who's pretty much a road crash example of not adapting during COVID?
Well, look, it's important to say that we did lose a lot of well-known brands during COVID, and not necessarily because of COVID. Some will say the writing was already on the wall, but the one that really stands out for me that I think was totally tone deaf, and whilst it was meant to be tongue-in-cheek, was really quite off, in my opinion, was the Aldi unprecedented ad. It was a knockoff because they kept using the unprecedented words that our Prime Minister Scott Morrison used in most of his speeches. And it's the ad where you see a woman, she's walking back from Aldi after doing a grocery, she's carrying her grocery bags, and the helicopter comes in with a news reporter and sort of says, you know, did you pay unprecedented prices for those? And the woman responds very colloquially, and in a very Australian tone, no, you've always got cheap prices, kind of thing.
Yeah.
For me, it didn't hit like you totally missed the mark. In fact, what they could have done is easily said, look, we've always had low prices. In fact, we had low prices before a pandemic hit. We're still here, we're still trading, and guess what? We're always stocked with toilet paper. That would have resonated far better. But a news crew coming down and making a big deal out of it, I just think they completely missed the mark.
Okay. And lastly, my final question is, how do you think consumer behavior is going to change in a post-COVID world?
I think it's already changing. So let's understand why. We went into lockdown. So all of our civil liberties were taken away. So if you think about it, in society, the way that we punish criminals is we take them away from society and we take away their liberties and we ask them to seriously modify their behaviours.
Yeah.
So when we as consumers went into lockdown, we were affected physically, financially, spiritually, emotionally. We were tested in every sense of the word. The other thing that happened too is we couldn't do our normal routines, our normal shopping behaviours. They were changed permanently. But what also happened too is when we're in lockdown, we actually had the opportunity to rethink of our lives. What's important? What do we want to get rid of? What do we want to change? We had time to pick up those hobbies. We had time to re-educate or upskill ourselves. So emerging from that, we're essentially emerging as different people. What was once important 3 to 6 months ago no longer is important.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to see that now the things that we used to invest in, we're not. And even though we do have money to spend, that spend has actually been redirected from a cost centre within the home budget to elsewhere. The way that you're going to have to communicate now is every single brand has had to change their tone, their messaging, their language, and their imagery. Doing influences and these hyper realities and these perfect scenarios and these whimsical, you know, dream state like advertisements and branded marketing material, it's not going to work. It's tone deaf. We don't understand it. We don't assimilate with it. We don't relate. We can't see ourselves in it. And they're not really speaking our language. So the biggest way that you're going to have to adjust is adjust to the tone of how we're speaking.
Yeah. Keep it real, basically. Yeah.
Essentially, keep it real.
Authenticity is becoming more and more important than ever before. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a word that's bandied around a lot, but it's only now that we're starting to understand what the definition of authenticity really is, because now we want it ourselves.
Great. Stella, thank you so much for your time today. If people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way they can reach you?
I'm on all the social media platforms, Stella Gianotto, Gianotto. It's pretty easy to find, or you can look me up on my website, brandforbrands.com.
Thanks, Stella. All right, everybody. See you again next time.